Welcome back to another episode of the Inquisitive Mamba Podcast. This is episode 163. I hope everyone is having a great day, great night, wherever you are around the world. A lot to get into on today's show. College football rankings coming out last night, the third week in a row that we're getting the rankings. The shakeup with Alabama losing to Oklahoma. A lot of fans were going crazy about that. Boomer Sooner coming down to T-Town, Tuscaloosa, winning that game 23-21. The question remains, is Alabama still that team? We'll get into that as well. The NFL, the Eagles, and the PI drama with the Lions and that Sunday night game there as well. The Patriots are surging at 9-2, beating the Jets this past weekend in the NFL. The Chiefs struggling at 5-5. What is wrong with the Kansas City Chiefs? We'll break that down as well. Tyrod Taylor being benched. Justin Fields being benched by the New York Jets. We'll talk about that as well. Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani repeating as the MVPs in the AL and NL. No Cal Raleigh, no Kyle Schwarber. Judge and Ohtani proving why they're the two best players in the MLB. Wicked 2 coming out this Friday. We'll briefly talk about that at the end of the show. Lane Kiffin's situation in Ole Miss. Is he going to stay? Is he not? We'll briefly talk about that as well. But as always, guys, make sure to follow us on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. James Franklin, also potentially Virginia Tech as their new hire. We'll get into that as well. No guest today for today's show. It's just me. We weren't able to accomplish a guest this week. Also, too, Shedeur Sanders' debut in the NFL, his shaky debut. He'll get his official start this weekend against the Las Vegas Raiders. 12th week in football, number 12. All the stars are aligning for Shedeur Sanders. Without further ado, let's get into the show. So, the college football rankings came out last night, and this is the third week in a row, and nothing really changed in the top 3 spots. Ohio State 1, Indiana 2, A&M 3, but Georgia did move up to 4, of course, because Alabama lost to Oklahoma in a big showdown there. And people were trying to tell me Alabama's not a good team, Joey. They're not a good team. They lost to Oklahoma. They lost to FSU week 1. Well, I'm just going to move away the week 1 stuff with FSU because that's week 1 in college football. And I've had a lot of conversations with friends and people on the internet. That's a long time ago. It feels like a century ago. The Oklahoma-Alabama game. Yeah, Oklahoma beat Alabama. Oklahoma is not a bad team. I've been trying to tell people this, and they're going to come back to me and they're going to say, they're not that good of a team. They got blown out by Texas. Now, did you remember when John Mateer was hurt earlier this season? Do you remember when he had that hand injury? Do you remember earlier in the season how good Oklahoma looked? They looked like one of the best teams in the country. Now, I'm not saying that. I still don't know about John Mateer because of his injury. But when you go down to Alabama and you beat a really good Alabama team, you're one of the best teams in the country. Now, everyone's going to say SEC bias. It has nothing to do with that. I was not shocked that Oklahoma beat Alabama. I was talking to people on social media before the game. I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma goes down to Tuscaloosa and they win that football game. This isn't a crazy thing to say. So let's stop that narrative now. Oklahoma is a good team. Alabama is not a bad team. Oh, they can't run the ball. They can't do this. Oh, Alabama, should they be in the playoffs when it's all said and done? Yes, they should be in the playoffs. They beat Georgia, who's number 4. And people sitting here telling me Alabama might not make the playoffs, I think you're absolutely crazy for saying that. Alabama 100% deserves to be in the playoffs. The whole SEC championship game right now, it looks like it's going to be Georgia and A&M because there's no SEC West, there's no East anymore with Oklahoma and Texas joining the SEC recently. So, which I just, people sitting here telling me that Alabama is not a good team, and do I still believe that Alabama could beat any one of the top teams in the country? 100%. It's the SEC. It's any given Saturday. It's college football. Anything can happen. And for people to sit here and tell me that Ohio State can't lose to any one of these top teams, you're sadly mistaken. And everyone's going to sit here and tell me, Joey, all you do is talk about Ohio State on social media. They're the number 1 team in the country. Of course I'm going to talk about them. Why wouldn't I? Any one of those top teams in the country, A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Indiana, Oregon, can beat Ohio State. For fans sitting here and telling me that Ohio State can't be beaten, you're sadly mistaken. I understand you beat Texas week 1 by 7 points. That was week 1. And I'm going to disclude that part of the conversation. Yes, you beat up on all these Big Ten teams as of late. Yes, you went on the road to Washington, and you beat them 24-6. Yes, you beat Illinois when they were 16th in the country. But to sit here and tell me with a straight face that you don't think Indiana can match up with Ohio State, you're absolutely crazy. I understand Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith on the perimeter on the outside. I understand you have an excellent defense, but you guys have not been battle tested. Ohio State has not been battle tested since week one, realistically. Now, I know we're not talking about just week one in college football. We're talking about the rest of the season. Yes, Ohio State has improved as the season has gone on. But if I'm sitting there as an Ohio State fan, I'm not going to say I'm concerned, but to sit here and say, oh, we're just going to cakewalk, we're going to run through everybody in the playoffs, and we're going to dominate the Big Ten championship. You still have to play Michigan. You still got to beat Michigan. You lost to them last year. So I think Ohio State can be beaten. Any team in college football in the top teams can be beaten. But to sit here and tell me that they're unbeatable and they're untouchable, I think that's absolutely crazy. However, though, I want to move on to this point here. The Miami Hurricanes Notre Dame debate. This has been an ongoing debate on social media right now, and a lot of people have asked my opinion about it. I didn't get a chance to talk about it on last week's show, but you guys know I love college football, and this is my favorite time of the year. The playoffs, the rankings, how things coming out, even though my Gators suck this year. We had a good game against Ole Miss this past weekend, even though Lacey ran for 224 yards, 3 touchdowns. It was a close game. However, though, sticking here on Notre Dame and Miami. I understand Miami beat Notre Dame head-to-head. I understand Notre Dame lost to Miami head-to-head. I understand Notre Dame was 0-2 at some point in this season. I understand that Miami lost to Louisville and they lost to SMU. But if you're going to put in Notre Dame in the college football playoff, you have to put in Miami. You can't sit here with a straight face and tell me Miami doesn't deserve to be in the playoff. Well, they lost to SMU and they lost to Louisville. Well, Notre Dame lost to A&M and they lost to Miami. Well, if you're looking at strength of schedule, I understand. But if you go head-to-head matchup, you have to put in Miami. They beat Notre Dame. I'm sorry. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I understand Miami's 13 right now, and things could change when the rest of this, with the next 2 weeks of college football. Let's see how it plays out with the ACC championship, with those things there. But to punish Miami and put them out because they lost to SMU and Louisville, I don't think you can do that. It goes back to 2 years ago when Texas and Alabama got in. And unfortunately, Florida State got punished when it was a 14 playoff. That was the last year of the 14 playoff. But you can't do that. You have to put in Miami if you put in Notre Dame. You got to that's how it goes. Unfortunately, one of those teams, BYU or Utah, maybe they'll be punished. But if you look at it, this is my thing too. I hate this because there's 2 losses in the ACC from Miami. And we're not going to sit here and say SMU and Louisville are the greatest teams or they're really bad. They're good football teams. They're not on the level of the top 5 teams. Yes, Miami, there was an inexcusable loss. They shouldn't have lost to SMU on the road. They should have lost to Louisville at home, but it's college football. Anything can happen. But that's the thing too. These bigger teams, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon, they're not losing to SMU on the road. And I know the committee is looking at that. The playoff rankings have not been finalized yet. But if you are going to put in Notre Dame, you got to put in Miami. And I know people are going to have a lot of things to say about this, but if you look at it, eye test wise, that's how I feel. The exact same way I felt last year. I know Alabama didn't make the playoff last year because they lost those crucial games in the end there. But this time around now, I think that you have to put in Miami. And that's my biggest thing. It's what I would love to see. Let's do a playoff. Let's have BYU and Miami play to see who gets in. They're never going to do that. I wish they would. I think it would be awesome. It's never going to happen. But that's exactly how I'm feeling about the whole college football rankings as of right now. It hasn't been finalized yet, but right now the top 4 teams are Ohio State, Indiana, A&M, and Georgia. So right now, that's what it's looking like, but we'll see how the rest of these next 2 weeks go. There could be some shakeups. Well, there could be some upsets. You never know. We talked about that. The next thing I wanted to talk about was James Franklin. Well, James Franklin's name has been in the media since he was fired by Penn State. You saw he was fired by Penn State on October 12th. The season kind of took a turn when Aller got hurt. They lost to Northwestern. They lost to UCLA. Very tough blow to them. He was potentially linked to Florida. It was never anything finalized there. The talks really didn't go any further. Well, then the Virginia Tech rumors started rumbling. And we talked about that briefly on social media with some people. And now it looks like James Franklin is going to be the next head coach of Virginia Tech, and it's about to be finalized. Nothing is official until anything happens. And it's crazy that his buyout was like around $50 million at Penn State, and now it's down to $9 million because he's going to be taking the Virginia Tech job. Supposedly, nothing is finalized. But if you're asking me, Joey, how do you feel about Virginia Tech hiring James Franklin? I think it's a good hire. I think this conference, him being in the ACC, works out perfectly for him. I'm very happy the Florida Gators are not hiring James Franklin. I know their season is still going on. They still could hire him if they really wanted to. But James Franklin to sit there, he's being very confident, of course. He said, we couldn't win a national championship at Penn State. We can win one at Virginia Tech. Now, I think this helps Virginia Tech's program, but I don't think James Franklin is the answer for a bigger team. Now, Virginia Tech is perfect for him. The pressure won't be as high as a Penn State, a Florida, or a big program like that. But for me, it's a big swing for them. They haven't been relevant in years. So yeah, go hire James Franklin. Hopefully he can put you guys back on the map. I know they don't have a ton of money in NIL, but I think he can bring something there. Penn State was good while he was there. They had some big bowl games. They made the playoffs last year, but Penn State's also a lot bigger program than Virginia Tech. But hey, these smaller schools like this, good for them. Virginia Tech hasn't been ranked since 2019. I looked this up before the show in the AP poll. They really haven't been relevant in a long time. So maybe he can bring them back on the map. I don't really have anything crazy to say like, oh my gosh, I'm so upset that Virginia Tech hired James Franklin, or I don't think this hire will work out. Yeah, I think James Franklin will have them probably in the 23 to 25 range. Now, he may surprise us, and they may be a lot better than what they're going to be. Who knows? But when it gets finalized, I'd probably give this like an 85 grade. I don't think James Franklin is one of the best college coaches in the country. I don't think he matches up on that level. I think he has a very tough time in close situational type football games and clock management and game management. But that's how I feel about it. The next thing I wanted to talk about, this is really great. And before I get into the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes about him with LSU and Ole Miss in Florida, there's one thing I wanted to say. This absolutely drives me insanity. Can we stop doing this with the media, with Lane Kiffin, for example? Can we just let the guy breathe? Can we let Lane Kiffin, like, I know this is what the media does, and this is how like relationships are ruined, or college coaches or NFL coaches. Same thing I had this conversation with last year. NFL coaches, what I said this last year on the podcast, shouldn't be contacted until the season is over. Like in the playoffs, where like a team is in the playoffs and coaches are taking interviews. Lane Kiffin hasn't taken any interviews with LSU or Florida, but the media, they can't stop. Let the guy breathe. He's literally coaching Ole Miss right now, and they're in the playoff, and they beat Florida last week. Now, I know this is what they do, but at some point, the guy's going to be like, I'm just going to stay at Ole Miss. I don't want to go to LSU. I don't want to go to Florida because of all the stuff going on. And you've seen Lane Kiffin on the Pat McAfee show, and how it's not true that they gave him Ole Miss gave him an ultimatum by November 28th. That's not true at all. Ole Miss is not doing that to Lane Kiffin. They're competing for a national championship this season. I don't know. I don't think they'll win a national championship. I think they've got a good football team, but I think when they run back into a Georgia or an Ohio State, an Indiana, Oregon, Alabama, teams like that, I think they'll struggle. Maybe even with a Notre Dame. Trinidad Chambliss has been really good for Ole Miss this season, and their run game has been exceptional, and Lane Kiffin's a great offensive play caller, but I don't think they match up with those higher teams like that. Now, I could be completely wrong. They've played exceptionally well this year. They did beat LSU, but they lost to Georgia, and they were up big against Georgia. Now, earlier in the season, not that early, but still, that's where I stand on that. But this whole Lane Kiffin situation here, Lane Kiffin can easily stay at Ole Miss. He said it's not about the money. But if I was Lane Kiffin, I know people are saying that, oh, Florida's not a bigger program or a better program than Ole Miss. Do people forget that Florida's won 3 national championships? And people sitting here and saying Florida's a bad program, you're crazy. I'm a Gator. They just had one of the best recruiting classes in the country at 7th last year. Now, Billy Napier can recruit. So can Lane Kiffin. So if you have that type of recruiting class and that roster with Lane Kiffin, oh, that's a playoff team 100%. Now, the other side of the coin is LSU's got the NIL money, just like Florida. They have the roster. Obviously, Garrett Nussmeier won't be back next year, but they're not far off either. So it's up to Lane Kiffin, and he thinks, okay, the NFL pipeline. Am I going to be more successful at Florida, or am I going to be more successful at LSU? His heart might be in Gainesville. His heart might be in Baton Rouge. Who knows? Or his heart is at Ole Miss. We don't know. Nobody knows but Lane Kiffin. So people sitting here saying, oh, well, he had his family and his reps at LSU, and he had his reps in Gainesville. Yeah, they're feeling it out. They're seeing what is the best decision for Lane Kiffin. What is my decision that I'm going to make? Now, we're going to find out after this season. Now, it remains to be seen how this playoff will go with Ole Miss, but to sit here and say Ole Miss is a better program than Florida, that is absolutely incorrect. Ole Miss has never made an SEC championship game. Ole Miss, how about you focus on this season and their fans telling me that Ole Miss is a better program than Florida? How about you make an SEC championship game before you spout off and say things like that? Florida is a great destination. I think Florida's chips are all in on Lane Kiffin. It's never been about the money for Lane Kiffin. He's making not a ton of money at Ole Miss right now. What I saw was $9 million. I don't know how true that is, but teams said that they would potentially offer him around the $11 million range. It's not about the money for Lane Kiffin. It's about what team is the best decision for him, national championship wise, program wise, bringing that program back into the college football contention, because Florida and LSU are both on the map. And excuse me, I said 2 weeks ago on the show, Ohio State, they haven't been on the map. Ohio State's been on the map for years. I'm talking about national championship contention. I understand you made the national championship a couple years ago with Justin Fields and the Alabama-Ohio State thing. Ohio State's always been on the map. I'm talking about national contention, and now things have changed with NIL. However, though, Lane Kiffin, his family was at LSU, and they were at Florida exploring the areas. But it just really frustrates me that this is going on. It's like, let the guy breathe. He's going to make his decision one way or the other. And yes, I'm a Gator fan through and through. I'll be very disappointed if we don't get Lane Kiffin. I will be very disappointed if he goes to LSU. But hey, you know what? Lane Kiffin could go and say, well, LSU just made the national championship a couple years ago. They just won. Are they a better program than Florida overall all time? Probably, yeah. But he may say, I want to work in Gainesville. I want to work with DJ Lagway, or he brings maybe some of his players over. I don't really know. It's a very tough thing. But also, too, the LSU situation's a mess. They've got to figure out the Brian Kelly stuff as well with the buyout, and now Brian Kelly hired a lawyer and all those things there. But Lane Kiffin could easily stay at Ole Miss. He's comfortable there. He's put them in the play. They're in the playoffs right now. They had a great year last year with Jackson Dart. I know they missed the playoffs. Florida kind of spoiled that, but he has been exceptionally well at Ole Miss. He's put them back on the map. They have one loss this season. They have NIL money. When I sit here and say Ole Miss doesn't have any NIL money, yes, they do. They have tons of NIL money. No, they don't have as much as Florida and LSU. Athletic program, Florida and LSU are way bigger than Ole Miss, but Lane Kiffin's done an exceptional job there. But yeah, the ultimatum rumors, that's a bunch of BS. He refuted that on the Pat McAfee show yesterday. That is not true. We talked about the Oklahoma-Alabama game as well. Texas and Georgia winning 35-10 over Texas. And am I going to say Texas is overrated? No, I don't think Texas is overrated. Georgia's a really good football team. They're hitting on all cylinders. They're clicking at the right time. Right around this time of the year is where you want to see a Georgia team like this take off. And yeah, Georgia can win the national championship. They're one of the best teams in the country. And anyone sitting here telling me otherwise is off base. Oh, they lost to Alabama earlier in the year. Oh, they were in a close game with Auburn on the road. It's the SEC. And last I checked, that team is starting to really come into play. They were in a close game with Florida a couple weeks ago, but they have looked good. I mean, they outscored Texas 21-0 in the fourth quarter. Texas has now dropped 7 points. And I saw this on social media yesterday about Texas and how all the fans on social media are upset. Texas was the preseason number one team. Preseason rankings don't mean anything. Obviously, we know that because Alabama lost to Florida State week 1. Texas lost to Ohio State week 1. It was 1 versus 2. It could go either way, right? However, though, I respect Texas for coming into the SEC and losing these type of games, and Steve Sarkisian taking accountability for these losses. He said, we scheduled the games, we wanted to come into this conference, and now we're here. Yeah, the SEC is a lot better than the Big 12. You saw now Oklahoma's come in with Texas, those two teams there. But I respect Texas for doing this, for coming into the SEC. They didn't have to come in. They didn't have to schedule Ohio State. They didn't have to come into the SEC, but I give them credit for coming into the best conference in college football. And you see how many teams in the playoffs and the rankings that came out this week, how many teams they have in there. So I respect the hell out of Texas. And they lost to Florida on the road. They lost to Georgia. They lost to Ohio State. So they have 3 losses. So they're not going to make the college football playoff. You're not going to get in with 3 losses. It's just not going to happen. But I respect Steve Sarkisian and their program for coming into the SEC and putting their money where their mouth is and playing these big games. And I'm not throwing shade to anybody. I'm just saying, in college football, when you want to be considered the best or you want to be a top dog, you should be playing top teams most of your season. You shouldn't be playing cupcake teams. And I'm not talking about just the Big Ten either, because I know people are just going to think, oh, Joey's throwing shade at Ohio State. He's throwing shade at Indiana and Oregon and these teams. No, I'm not. Alabama's playing Eastern Illinois this week. I know that these schools pay these schools to play one another and to help them out. But you have no business playing, like Florida had no business playing Long Island week 1. Alabama has no business playing Eastern Illinois. Ole Miss has no business playing the Citadel. As a college football fan, I don't want to sit there and watch them play 70-0. I want to watch Texas, Ohio State. I want to watch Texas versus Georgia. I want to watch Georgia versus Oregon. I want to see Ohio State, Alabama. That's what you live for college football, not those wrinkly dinkly teams coming down here on a Saturday at 3:30 and the spread is 40.5. No. So that's how I feel about the whole Texas situation with the Georgia game and how Texas has played out this season. Texas has a lot of money at NAL. They're not going anywhere. So people to sit here and think Texas is falling apart at the wayside. Yeah, maybe this season they've lost 3 games. They lost some pieces last year. They were the preseason number 1 team, but they're not going anywhere. This is some buzz I've seen on the internet lately about Sam Leavitt at Arizona State. Well, Arizona State came in at 25 in the new college football rankings last night. However, though, Sam Leavitt and the portal buzz, what's really next? Could Sam Leavitt actually leave Arizona State? If I'm Sam Leavitt, I know Kenny Dillingham has been a great coach. They made the playoffs last year, and they were a good team with Scadaboo last year and Sam Leavitt, and they have one of the best receivers in the country. But if I'm Sam Leavitt, I'm not staying at Arizona State. I understand Arizona State has NAL money and just like a lot of other teams, but to get to the NFL, I'm going to Miami. I'm going to Texas A&M. Ohio State obviously is saying now, so that's not going to work. I'm going to Oregon if Dante Moore leaves. Like, I'm not staying at Arizona State. I understand Kenny Dillingham is a great coach. But if you're sitting here telling me and Sam Leavitt has an opportunity, this is a new way of college football now. It's anyone's game. These are literally free agents when the season's over. If I'm Sam Leavitt, I'm leaving. I'm getting an NIL bag. Like, I'm pretty sure Lenore Sellers is out at South Carolina and he's going to go to Miami. So there's going to be a team for Sam Leavitt that's going to be calling. Like, it's the new nature. It's the new landscape of college football. It's how it is. He's considered one of the top college footballs in the country. If he enters the transfer portal, you know how many teams will be calling for him? Okay, hear me out. This is crazy. And I'm a Florida fan, but imagine Sam Leavitt with Lane Kiffin at LSU. Oh my gosh. Or Sam Leavitt at Florida with Lane Kiffin. I love DJ Lagway, but it remains to be seen if he's going to stay, if Florida keeps him. It's weird to say keeps him because who knows, right? Like, I don't really know. Everything is up in the air. And about 2 weeks, when the Florida Gators season is over, when LSU season is over, LSU is probably going to make a bowl game, most likely, because I think they've got 1 or 2. They have Oklahoma left, and I think they have 1 easy game before that. However, though, Florida, their season's is over in 2 weeks. Tennessee this week, FSU next weekend. So things are going to be changing very quickly at Florida, at these other schools. Arizona State's in the play in 25. They'll make a bowl game. Who knows if Leavitt plays? It's just buzz. But if I'm Sam Leavitt, I'm out of Arizona State. I'm going to a bigger program. I'm going to the SEC. I'm going to the Big Ten. I understand the Big 12 has gotten much better, but if I'm him, I'm out. I want to hear, where do you guys think Sam Leavitt could potentially transfer to? Who knows, right? These are all just hearsays. That's why I love having these conversations with you guys on social media. It's my favorite thing to do is to hear you guys out as long as you're respectful. As long as you're respectful. If not, I don't want to respond. So Texas Tech could be an option as well with NIL. Obviously, Miami, if Sellers doesn't go there, if he goes somewhere else. But there's going to be a lot of shakeups here in the next coming weeks. We talked about the Lane Kiffin situation there. We talked about Miami and Notre Dame with that position there. Texas A&M coming back against South Carolina down 30-3. There's really not much to talk about in this game. I thought Texas A&M was going to come back. I didn't know if they were going to win. I was like, this game is 30-10. Oh, it's 30-17. Hold your horses. We were watching this game. I was watching this game with some friends, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, whoa, A&M could actually win this game. And then they came back down. They were down 30-3. Okay, here we go. This is where I'm excited about. The fans on social media telling me that A&M is not as good as any one of these top teams in the country is absolutely crazy. I understand South Carolina is 3-7. I understand they have not lived up to expectations this season. But I will tell you this, South Carolina is a lot better than their record. And last I checked, it is the SEC. I would take South Carolina over Rutgers, Purdue, Wisconsin, and those teams basically have the exact same record. Northwestern, put South Carolina in the SEC, put South Carolina in the Big Ten or the ACC. That's a 9-10 win team. 8-9-10 win team. Probably 9 or 10 wins. Easily. The competition that they've had to go up against in the SEC has been extremely brutal. Now, I understand you're supposed to come to play, and Sellers was supposed to be much better. Sellers also did get hurt earlier this season. I'm not making really any excuse for South Carolina. They should have never blown a 30-3 lead, but man, Texas A&M is a good football team. And Mike Elko said, we won that game 5 weeks ago. We know how good our football team is. They're going to make the SEC championship game because they're most likely going to beat Texas. And that's how I feel. A&M's a good football team. They can beat anyone in the country. They are a top 3 team for a reason. And people are going to say, oh, they really haven't played anybody. They blew the doors off of LSU down there at Tiger Stadium. So people telling me that A&M's not a good team and they almost blew, and they shouldn't have only won by 1. It is college football. Give them credit for coming back. So I think it's going to be a great finish for A&M the rest of the season. I'm very excited to see how they'll play, of course, against a big dog like a Georgia, because they've never made the SEC championship game. I know they're a newer team in the SEC, but it will be very interesting to see how A&M does the rest of the way. And Marcel Reed has been exceptional. They did beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is number 9 last I checked. So they did beat LSU. They did beat Notre Dame. They're not a fluke. Texas A&M is not a fluke type of team. They can beat any one of these top teams in the country. Let's move on to the NFL with the NFL Week 11 recap. Well, the Patriots beat the Jets 27-14 on Thursday night. Tyrod Taylor is now the Jets quarterback. Really won't talk much about that. I'm excited to see how the Patriots will play this weekend against the Bengals. We talked briefly about that on the stream we did Thursday night. The Steelers beating the Bengals 34-12. Aaron Rodgers suffering that wrist injury. He said he's going to be playing most likely against the Bears, and Aaron Rodgers loves playing against the Bears because he was a Packer, so Aaron Rodgers is going to want to troll the Bears. That was the first thing that came to my mind. Jaguars beating the brakes off of the Chargers 35-6. That was crazy. I didn't really catch any of that game. Panthers beating the Falcons 30-27. That was big as well. And hey, this week I'm going to give Bryce Young his flowers. The Panthers have been so lopsided. They have the Niners this upcoming Monday. Brock Purdy coming back for the Niners, beating the Cardinals 41-22. San Francisco dominated that game. They have the Panthers this weekend as well. Bills beating the Bucks 44-32. Josh Allen with a 6-touchdown performance. That was an insane game. There was no defenses on either team. However, Josh Allen with 6 touchdowns is absolutely insane. Packers beating the Giants 27-20. Not really much to talk about there. Cowboys beating the Raiders 33-16. And Cowboys, they're back. No, they're not. The Cowboys beat the Raiders, and the Raiders are one of the worst teams in the NFL. Geno Smith should have been benched weeks ago. I don't know if Pete Carroll is just holding on to the ego and he doesn't want to bench Geno because of the Seattle days. I'm not really sure, but the Cowboys aren't back, not quite yet. They're going to play the Philadelphia Eagles this Sunday in Jerry World. I'll be excited to see. Their defense looked a lot better. I will give them that. Old Cowboys defense before the trade deadline and getting back to Marion Overshown probably would have gave up 20 to 30 points. They still gave up 16, garbage time touchdown at the end, but I'm excited to see how the Cowboys will do this weekend. Really don't want to spend too much time on that. Dolphins beat the Commanders 16-13 in Madrid, a thriller. Commanders missed 2 field goals. Tua was still Achan is just absolutely insanity, and really not much to talk about there. Bears beating the Vikings with another fourth quarter close ending game. Bears, man, Bears are 7-3, I'm pretty sure. Absolutely crazy. Broncos Chiefs 22-19. I didn't think the Broncos were going to win that game. I was like, this is going to be a close game. But the Chiefs, their one-score games that they were in last year compared to they are this year, they're 0-5 in one-score games this year compared to where they were last year. I don't remember exactly the number that they were last year, but this season in their close games, they're 0-5. Eagles Lions 16-9. We'll talk briefly about that, about the pass interference, but Shedeur Sanders making his debut against the Ravens, because Dylan Gabriel got hurt, but he officially makes his debut this weekend against the Raiders. Briefly, we talked about that in the intro, and now we're gonna really get into it. So, Joey, how do you feel about Shedeur Sanders' performance Sunday against the Baltimore Ravens? I am not going to be judging Shedeur Sanders off of a 4-16 day, and he had a couple drives and 1 interception, and he was sacked twice. You can't judge Shedeur Sanders off of one game, not even a full game. He didn't even have first game reps. He didn't even have reps with the first team. So people sitting there saying Shedeur Sanders is already a bust. It's already time to rule him out. No. It's one game against the Ravens that you were put in. And yes, Shedeur Sanders struggled against the blitz. I watched his tape. I watched the full breakdown on YouTube of every single throw he made. Shedeur Sanders made some good throws. Do I think Shedeur Sanders is better than Dylan Gabriel? Yes, I do. Do I think the Browns should stick with Shedeur Sanders the rest of this season from week 12 until week 17? 100% I do. But I don't know if the Browns see it like that. Obviously now Shedeur Sanders is quarterback 1 for this weekend. We will see. I think the Raiders defensive line will give the Browns offensive line some fits. But the one thing I will say, though, it was not even a full game. And it's very tough for an NFL quarterback to come in there. And yes, Shedeur Sanders is not the most mobile guy. I'm not going to sit here and rip Shedeur Sanders to shreds over a lousy performance that you want to call because he didn't even play a full game. He was 4 of 16, 47 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. 2 carries of 27 yards. He had a crucial third down. Yes, the Browns were up 16-10 when Shedeur Sanders came in the game. Did he blow the lead? Yes, he blew the lead. But he did make a really, really good throw at the end of the game there on 3rd and 5, and it hit the receiver in the hands, and the receiver basically dropped it. And then there was a 4th down there that I saw where they blitzed him, and he rolled out, and he tried to find the guy, but he couldn't. But it was a bad throw. But to judge Shedeur Sanders off of that performance, I'm not going to sit here and do that. I will sit here and judge Shedeur Sanders after a couple games. No, Shedeur Sanders is not the most mobile guy. No, he doesn't have the biggest arm. But when you're getting thrown in there like that with no first team reps, the kitchen sink is basically being thrown at you, you're going to have a really tough time. And the Ravens have a solid defense. It's gotten better the past few weeks, and they were blitzing the living hell out of him. The defensive coordinator, Zachary Orr, for the Ravens, was sitting there calling in and going, we're going to blitz Chedur. We're going to blitz Chedur. That's what happens to rookie quarterbacks. He hasn't really had any reps. Let's judge Shedeur Sanders after a couple games. And it's really even hard to do that as it is. Oh, he's a 5th round pick. He's exactly what we expected him to be. It's the Cleveland Browns, last I checked. I think Shedeur Sanders should be traded this offseason so he can actually go get molded by a real team. I would love if a real team were to pick him up to see, because I don't think he's that bad. We don't know yet. Maybe people are right, he's not that guy, but to judge him off of that early, no, we're not going to do that. Let's see how he plays this weekend against the Raiders. I'm excited to see. Everybody will be tuned into that game, and the stars are aligning. Shedeur Sanders, week 12, number 12. And Kyle Hamilton was trolling Shedeur Sanders with the legendary celebration. Hey man, let's see how he does against the Raiders this weekend. He'll have a full week of practice with the first string reps, and we'll see. And hopefully, now Kevin Stefanski gave the play calling up, and they call some good plays for him, and he had some good throws. He did. The 4 of 16. Yeah, you're going to look at that stat line, or just the box score guys are going to look at that. I think he was a lot better. How long should the team give him to adapt before considering other options at QB? I think the Raiders should, the Cleveland Browns should go with Shedeur Sanders the rest of the way. Was this just rookie nerves, or does he have the bigger adjustments to make? Yeah, I think Shedeur Sanders can adjust his pocket presence a little bit. I think he can adjust when you have the blitz coming at you. But when you have when you have a blitzer coming off the edge, a free guy coming off the edge, that's very hard to defend, especially when nobody's blocking him like that and you're just getting thrown in there. I think it's really, really hard to judge him like that. But the Browns are 2-8. They have nothing to lose. Play Shedeur Sanders the rest of the way. I feel like you've already seen what Dillon Gabriel brings to the table. I think Dillon Gabriel's a backup, but now Dillon Gabriel had his time. Now give Chedur his time. He has the concussion. It was unfortunate that's the way he got hurt. He didn't get benched, but let Shedeur Sanders play some games because you drafted both of these quarterbacks to see who's better. That's the QB competition that you were having this offseason. And you went with Dillon Gabriel to start the way. Unfortunately, he got hurt. Now let's see what Shedeur Sanders can do for the Cleveland Browns. Now, when I say what can he do, it's going to be harder to judge because they're 2-8. You have nothing to lose. Put Shedeur Sanders in there for the rest of the way and see how it goes. Jets briefly get Justin Fields getting benched. There's really not much to talk about there. Justin Fields is not a good NFL quarterback. I don't really want to harp on that too much. Is benching Fields the right move for the Jets, or should they stick with Tyrod Taylor? I think the Jets should stick with Tyrod Taylor the rest of the way. Justin Fields isn't doing you any good. You're not winning any football games with Justin Fields at the helm. You've already seen what he's been able to do this season. I think it was a mistake even giving him that contract in the first place, but that's the nature of the NFL. Briefly talk about the Chiefs. I mean, they're 5-5. The Chiefs really aren't. They could easily. The Chiefs could win out. There's one thing I did want to talk about here, though, from the Bengals and the Steelers game, and this has been all over social media. Jalen Ramsey, Jamar Chase. Jalen Ramsey threw the punch, but hold on, back up a second. Jalen Ramsey was spit on by Jamar Chase, but this is how I feel about this situation here. Jamar Chase spit on Jalen Ramsey, but don't forget that Jalen Ramsey also punched Jamar Chase in the face. I understand that he was retaliating, but at hockey, both guys go. You retaliated, so why isn't Jalen Ramsey being suspended? He literally threw a punch at Jamar Chase. I don't think I'm crazy for saying that, and if I am, I'm crazy for saying it. If you guys think that. But I don't think that it's crazy to suspend both of them. Jamar Chase, of course, he lost his paycheck for this game, but I don't know what Jamar Chase was thinking. Maybe there was more to it, but Jalen Ramsey also should have been suspended. Now, I understand they're going to say his punishment was him getting ejected from the game because he got 2 misconduct penalties. But if you're asking me, I think he should be suspended as well. You threw a punch, you go. I understand you're ejected from the game, but that's how I feel about it. Of course, Jamar Chase denied it, and he was saying that I didn't spin on nobody, but it was very obvious that he did. Now, people are going to take it in so many different directions, but that's just coming from me because of a hockey background. You both go. Jamar Chase should have been ejected from the game as well. What it should have been was Jamar Chase ejected, and as well as Jalen Ramsey ejected. They both should have gone. Jamar Chase shouldn't have finished the game. If you're spitting on somebody like that, that's how I feel about it. Now, I understand hockey and football are totally different, but this one here, though, the Sunday night game, Eagles-Lions, I didn't get a chance to watch all the Eagles and the Lions game. I fell asleep. It was very boring. It was 16-9 finish. Defensive battle for the Eagles again. I understand everyone wanted to talk about this. It never, at the NFL and football, it never comes down to one play. But if you're sitting there and telling me the A.J. Brown, Rock Ya-Sin play was pass interference on the Detroit Lions cornerback, Rock Ya-Sin, then we completely do not agree. That was not pass interference by any stretch of the margin. It was very, very ticky-tacky. And the refs having their fingerprints all over this game in the end in November. You can't call a call like that. And I understand one call does not determine the outcome of a game. But that is an absolute ridiculous call. The Eagles didn't win off of that call. It may have changed things. Who knows? But that is a terrible, terrible call. Watch that back and tell me that was pass interference on Rock Ya-Sin. They're ticky-tacky fighting. That should have been a no call, and that it didn't determine the outcome of the game, but it was very, very questionable that the refs called that. Like, as a fan, not even a fan of either Eagles or Lions, that was it. That was terrible to see. I watched it back and I'm like, what? They called that pass interference? How was that pass interference on Rock Ya-Sin? If anything, it's a no call. Now, obviously, it didn't change the outcome of the game. One play never does that, but that's really how I felt. about that play there. But was the pass interference call justified, or did it unfairly swing the game? You can say it swung the game. The Lions could have had another chance, but it's just really frustrating to see because you're like, you never want to see that in the end of the game. Just let them play it out. It's ticky tacky. It wasn't egregious. Like, he wasn't grabbing his jersey. He didn't like knock him off of his route. So that's really how I feel about that there. But moving on to the MLB, this will basically be the last part of the show. Aaron Judge winning the MVP over Cal Raleigh. I was trying to tell people a month ago on social media when I posted this clip, Aaron Judge should 100% be the AL MVP. I understand Cal Raleigh hit 60 home runs and he was a switch hitter, and catcher is an extremely valuable position. But when you look at the metric there and you look at almost every single statistic in baseball, Aaron Judge basically beat him out and he still missed 10 games. Batting .331 is absolutely insane. This may be a hot take. People may call me crazy, but I don't think you should win an MVP in the AL or NL if you're batting lower than 260. I know 250 is like right around the average, but you didn't even bat 250 and you want to consider yourself an MVP. The last MVP, which I said this on the show last month, to win an MVP was Ohtani in the AL in 2021 with the Angels when he batted. I think it was around in the 250s. Now, I understand that you're taking away the fact from the season, from the averages and the statistics. But I mean, it was Aaron Judge had another historical year. Cal Raleigh had a great year. But what they should do is they should have an offensive player of the year and an MVP, just like in the NFL. But Aaron Judge is the AL MVP. He's the best player in the AL. He is the most valuable player. And I wish people would give me more credit for saying that last month, because everyone was like, Cal Raleigh's going to win. These East Coast guys are crazy. You're absolutely insane that Cal Raleigh Aaron Judge is going to win the MVP. No. And there really isn't much to talk about in the NAL, in the NAL, and the NL. Shohei Ohtani is the best player in the MLB. He's the best player in the NL. He would 100% deserve that. Aaron Judge took home the AL MVP, earning 17 of 30 first place votes, tallying 355 points against Cal Raleigh's 335. Yes, 100%. Aaron Judge just got his third MVP. Of course, Ohtani unanimously receiving it. Yeah, Judge dominated offensively, 331, led the majors in on-base percentage, 457, slugging 688, and an OPS of 1.144. There's really no debate. There really isn't. If Cal Raleigh broke Aaron Judge's home run record, or maybe if Cal Raleigh batted better than 247, I think he batted, then we could have that debate. But they won. Ohtani and Judge deserved back-to-back MVPs. It signals they are the era of baseball. They are the two best players in the MLB. Somebody's gonna have to take their crown from the NL MVP and the AL MVP. No discluding Cal Raleigh's amazing season, but Aaron Judge 100% deserved that MVP. And it has nothing to do with New York sports media or New York Yankees bias. Aaron Judge put him on another team, and he's doing the same thing with those numbers. And I hate when fans say, oh, it was a little league park in Yankee Stadium, and Aaron Judge wouldn't do that in all those other home runs or in all those other parks. He 100% would. That is such a bunch of BS. I can't stand that narrative when people sit here and say that. However, though, the last part of the show is Wicked 2 comes out this Friday. I'm super excited to see Wicked 2. I saw Wicked 1 last year. I can't believe that Wicked 2 is already out. I'm super pumped for it. I can't wait. I loved Wicked 1. It's got everyone buzzing on social media. They just had the New York premiere yesterday. The sequel could redefine how musicals are adapted for film, blending the magic with the cinematic storytelling. I thought the first one was great. I'm very excited to see the second one. I've already some people I know have already gone and saw the second one with the early premiere and the early release. But I will definitely give you guys my reaction and how I feel about Wicked 2. It comes out Friday. I am going to see it. I cannot absolutely wait to see this movie. You are going to get my raw reaction. You're going to get exactly how I feel. I have my Wicked t-shirt hanging up behind me. Last year I went to see Wicked 1 in theaters, and I will definitely be going to see Wicked 2. I won't be waiting that long because I can't wait that long. I got to go see it. But that does it for us, guys. I hope you guys listen to me yapping for 44 straight minutes. That's exactly what we recorded for today. But as always, make sure to follow the Inquisitive Mamba Podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. You may not agree with me on everything I say, but I'm going to give it to you 100%. We're going to keep it 100 on this podcast every single time. Give us some feedback. Tell me what you'd like for me to talk about for next week with Thanksgiving coming up next week. Hopefully we'll have a guest for next week. I'm not entirely sure. I think we will, but I'll be enjoying some more football this weekend. There's not really a lot of good college football games this weekend. You got USC and Oregon. I'm not going to say Tennessee and Florida will be a good game, even though we're in the swamp, we're home. Some good NFL games this weekend. But as always, guys, it's always Mamba mentality, and we will see you guys next week.